This conference will now be recorded.
Hello. Hello.
Yes,
Hello.
ma'am.
Am I audible? Good morning, everyone.
Yes.
Today's our topic is venous disorders, which includes the varicose veins and the deep vein thrombosis. So today we will discuss about the complete varicose veins and the what is chronic venous sufficiency, what is the pathophysiology. So coming to the introduction. So first you have to know the what are the venous drainage system of the lower extremity. So which consists of three sets of veins, that is the deep veins, superficial veins, and the perforating veins. So all veins contain the delicate one-way valves that normally open to allow the blood to flow towards the heart and which prevents the blood from flowing in a retrograde fashion after the closure of the valves. Because varicose veins is also one of the important long case for your practicals. So which the points which were covered in the theory class will be asked in the viva or during presentation of the case. So you should in detail you should know the venous drainage system of the lower extremity. So coming to the first veins of the lower limb. So there are superficial veins which consists of long saphenous vein and the short saphenous vein. Whereas the deep vein consists of anterior posterior tibial vein, peroneal vein, popliteal vein, and the femoral vein. And third consists of the perforator veins, which are direct and indirect perforators. So coming to the long saphenous vein. So this is the largest and longest superficial of the limb, that is the lower extremity. So that it is used in grafting also, vein grafting. So whenever the patient is undergoing bypass surgery, so we will take the vein graft from long saphenous vein. So which begins on the dorsum of foot from medial end of the dorsal venous arch. So which runs 1 to 1.5 inch anterior to the medial malleolus, because this anatomical location of the long saphenous vein is important for undergraduate students, which helps in venesection. So whenever in casualty or when you are in a house urgency or in other any surgical department, when the patient comes with severe burns, with severe dehydration, so where we could not cannulate the veins, so then we have to go for venesection, that is the long saphenous vein. So 1 to 1.5 inch anterior to the medial malleolus, we have to give the incision. So where there will be this long saphenous vein will be more superficial. So along the medial side of the leg and behind the knee. So at the ankle, the position of the long saphenous vein is constant. So that only we will give the incision over that area during venesection. So which is lying in the groove between the anterior border of the medial malleolus and the tendon achilles. A tendon of tibialis anterior. So in the thigh, it inclines us forwards to, this is the course of the long saphenous vein. So forwards to reach the saphenous opening where it pierces the cribriform fascia and opens into the femoral vein, that is the deep vein, that is 3 to 4 centimeters below and lateral to the pubic tubercle, that is the anatomical location of the saphenous opening. So so in the lower two-thirds of the leg and in the upper two-thirds of the thigh, the vein lies on the deep fascia, that is somewhat some deep to the superficial portion, that is the course which is superficial is the lower middle one-third of the leg. Where the vein crosses the knee joint, it becomes more superficial and often subcuticular. So what is the importance? So what are the structures accompanying the long saphenous vein? So in the leg, saphenous now lies in close relation with the long saphenous vein. So previous days, they used to do the Trendelenburg's operation along with stripping of the whole length of the long saphenous vein, that is from saphenofemoral junction to the ankle. So in those days, there is a increased incidence of saphenous neuritis. So which because in the lower part of the leg, the saphenous now lies in close relation with the long saphenous vein, where you will definitely injure the saphenous nerve while doing the stripping of the long saphenous vein. So the nerve is very closely applied to the vein in lower two-thirds of the leg and often injured in exploring or stripping the saphenous vein. So in the thigh, medial femoral cutaneous now runs in close relation with the vein. So nowadays we are doing the Trendelenburg surgery operation along with stripping of the long saphenous vein up to the knee joint only. We are not doing up to the ankle joint to prevent the injury to the saphenous nerve. So throughout its length, the long saphenous vein is accompanied by a lymphatic trunk which drains the dorsum of the foot and the anterior and medial aspects of the legs and the thigh. So this drains into the superficial group of inguinal lymph nodes. So coming to the tributaries of the long saphenous vein. So just below the knee, long saphenous vein receives the posterior arch vein, also called as Leonardo's vein, which collects the blood from the posteromedial aspect of the cuff. So another tributary is the anterior veins of leg, otherwise called as stocking vein. So which ascends across the shin and joins either long saphenous vein or the posterior arch vein, that is Leonardo's vein. So there is a free anastomosis between tributaries of short saphenous vein and venous arch connecting the medial ankle perforating vein, and this medial ankle perforating veins are again connected with the long saphenous vein in the lower third of the leg. So this implies that there is a communication between the both long saphenous vein and as well as the short saphenous vein. So in the thigh, before entering the saphenous opening, it receives these are the main tributaries which should be kept in mind, because during open surgical, that is open Trendelenburg's operation, so we should just ligate all these tributaries before dividing the superficial long saphenous vein. So what are the main tributary branches? So these are the anterolateral vein of thigh. Another one is the posteromedial vein of thigh. So then superficial external pudendal vein and superficial epigastric vein and superficial circumflex iliac vein and deep external pudendal vein. So after ligating all these tributaries only, we have to move on to stripping of the vein. So in the lower third of the thigh, long saphenous vein connects with the femoral vein in Hunter's canal or adductor's canal by long perforating vein, that is called as Hunterian perforator. So this is the diagram where showing the all the main tributaries of the long saphenous vein which drains into the deep vein, that is the femoral vein, and others are the perforators. These are the constant perforators. This is Hunterian perforator in lower third of the thigh, and Boyd's perforator at gastrocnemius perforator, and all these three Crockett perforating veins are the lateral leg perforators, and other are the ankle perforators named by Mayer and Kushner. So coming to the other important vein is the short saphenous vein. So short saphenous also begins by the fusion of the number of small veins below and behind the lateral malleolus. Here veins runs with the large sural nerve up to lower third of the leg. So there is a chance of injury to the sural nerve. Again, sural nerve is also some conditions were used to transposition or graft also will use the sural nerve, especially for facial nerve grafting. So we will use the sural nerve for facial nerve grafting while get injured during the parotid surgery. So short stiffness vein is runs upwards up to the middle of the popliteal space where it passes deep to fascia to enter into the popliteal vein. So what is the course of the short stiffness vein? So in the lower one third of the cup, it lies on the deep fascia and covers by skin and superficial fascia. Whereas in middle third of the leg, it enters in the intrafascial compartment of the gastrocnemius muscle. That is the aponeurotic investment of the gastrocnemius muscle. So it will be somewhat deep when compared to the lower third of the cup. So upper third of the leg, it penetrates the deep fascia and enters the popliteal fascia and lies between the two heads of the gastrocnemius muscle that lies 1.25 centimeters below the transverse grease behind the knee joint. So here the short stiffness vein will join the deep vein called popliteal vein. So here it forms the saphennopopliteal junction. So what are the structures accompanying the short stiffness vein? So that is the sural nerve in lower third of the leg. Another one is the lymphatic trunk which drains the lateral aspect of the foot and drains into the popliteal group of lymph nodes. So whereas lymphatic trunks along the long stiffness vein drains into the superficial group of inguinal lymph nodes. So where the vein passes through fascia posterior through the fascia, posterior cutaneous nerve emerges out from deep to the superficial. So in the upper part of the vein, it communicates with the long stiffness vein via the posteromedial vein of neck. So short stiffness vein, whether it drains into the deep vein, that is a popliteal vein, or it may communicate with the long stiffness vein via the posteromedial vein of leg. And another course is it may run above the popliteal fossa, that is above the back of the knee joint, and end in the deep veins in the either lower thigh or it may end up in the long stiffness vein in upper part of the way. So this is the course of the short stiffness vein where you can say either in the popliteal uh, at the saphennopopliteal junction drains into the popliteal vein, or it may communicate with the directly long stiffness vein or indirectly through the posteromedial vein of leg. So coming to the deep veins. So the veins lies in the deep facial plane and are supported by the powerful muscles of the leg. So these are the anterior and posterior tibial veins, peroneal vein, popliteal vein, and the femoral vein. So these veins accompany with the corresponding arteries. So this is the diagram where we were showing the common iliac vein dividing into internal and external. Internal iliac vein goes into the pelvis, whereas the external iliac vein goes into the thigh and the lower extremity. So again it divides into the femoral vein. So that is great saphenous vein drains into the femoral vein and popliteal vein, fibular vein, anterior tibial vein, and dorsalis pedis vein. Coming to the perforator veins. So these are the communicating veins between the superficial and the deep veins. So there are two types of perforating veins, that is called there are indirect veins and the direct veins. So by name itself, it says that indirect perforating veins. So these indirectly connect the superficial and the deep venous system. So these consist of small superficial veins which penetrate the deep fascia to connect with the vessels in the muscle and in turn ends in the deep vein. So that it is called as indirect perforating veins. So this is so in diagram you can see the difference. So before draining into the deep system, it connects with the muscular vessels and in turn ends in the deep vein. Whereas in direct perforating directly connects with the deep veins. So again these are the some named and constant direct perforators because in lower extremity there are number of more than 300 to 400 unnamed and inconstant perforators are there. So you cannot remember all those things. So you should remember the direct perforators which are inconstant in position. So in type it is in adductor canal perforator connects the long saphenous vein with the femoral vein in lower part of the adductor canal called as Hunterian perforator. That is in the proximal 1/3 of the thigh. So in the lower third and medial aspect, long saphenous vein connects femoral vein via the Dodd's perforator. So that is just above the knee joint. So below knee, perforator connects long saphenous vein or the post arch vein. That is a tributary of the long saphenous vein with the posterior tibial vein known as the Boyd's perforator, otherwise called as gastrocnemius perforator. So likewise in the leg there are one lateral perforator at the junction of the mid and lower third of the leg, so which connects the short saphenous vein with the peroneal vein. So medially there are again three perforators which connect posterior arch vein with the posterior tibial vein known as the Koppe's perforators. That is in upper 1/3 of the leg, middle 1/3 and lower 1/3. So upper medial perforator lies at the junction of the middle and lower third of the leg, whereas middle medial perforator lies 4 inches above the medial malleolus and lower medial perforator lies posterior inferior to the medial malleolus. And here I did not mention another ankle perforators are called as Mayer and Kushner. So all these names and positions of the direct constant perforators are very important during your viva. So that only I clearly mentioned all the anatomical positions and the course of the long saphenous, short saphenous, what are the main important tributaries which connects the superficial system to the deep venous system. So another important topic is the chronic venous insufficiency. So before going into the varicose veins, we should know the exact what is the pathophysiology, what are the causes and risk factors for development of varicosities and the deep vein thrombosis. So chronic venous insufficiency. So the term covers all the signs related to the functional or physical impairment of the venous system. So it is caused by valve insufficiency with or without associated venous obstruction affecting both the superficial and deep venous system and will have a chronic course. So what are the types of chronic venous insufficiency? So malfunction of the venous system can be primary. So most common causes are primary, 90% of cases, and secondary is 10% of cases. So primary is without any underlying etiology. So secondary is in addition to the underlying cause or etiology. So totally it affects the 11 to 24% of population. So predominance will be among the women with ratio, woman-men ratio is 3:1. So here is male female ratio. I said it is woman and male, that is 3:1. So as I said earlier, no, idiopathic or when the impairment is not a consequence of another disease is called as primary, and when it is consecutive to another disease, especially deep venous thrombosis, that is post-thrombotic or post-phlebitic syndrome. So what is venous physiology? So veins have limited contractile capacity. So the return of the blood to the heart from the lower extremity is facilitated by the muscle pump function of the corpse. So that's why it is called as peripheral heart. So the normally functioning valves in the venous system prevents the retrograde flow of the blood. So venous valves are most prevalent in the distal lower third of the leg. So when one or more of those valves become incompetent, then the symptoms of the venous insufficiency can develop. So venous insufficiency is nothing but the any obstruction in the flow or valvular restriction or any valvular dysfunction. So what are the risk factors? So risk factors may be hereditary factors. So some congenital cause of varicose veins, that is due to congenital absence of valves. So that is seen in Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome. So hereditary factors and sedentary lifestyle and as age advances, there may be a weakening of the muscular strength of the vein wall. So then there will be a valvular dysfunction and insufficiency or deficiency of the muscle and the that is peripheral heart, that is a muscular pump around the cough. And female sex hormones, especially the progesterone. So progesterone will have the effect as smooth muscle relaxation and some enzymatic factors. So there may be a defective vasoconstriction in the long-standing position and hypercoagulability condition of the blood, especially in the events of a thrombosis or embolism. So what is the pathophysiology? So exact causes leading to the development of chronic venous disease are not clearly known, but the important one is the valve insufficiency. So there may be a quantitative or qualitative insufficiency. So quantitative is an event of congenital insufficiency in terms of number of valves or massive destruction due to venous thrombosis. So whereas qualitative as a result of valve being torn or due to permeability of the valve, that is due to trauma. Or venous valve damage, and damage to the venous wall seems to be more common than the valve damage. So the wall becomes thinner at the level of the valve. So the vein is dilated and pushes the valve cusps apart, compromising the impermeability. So this wall damage may be related to damage to the innermost layer of the vein, that is the endothelium. So there is a damage of the endothelium layer of the vein wall. So damage to the walls in the venous wall under the influence of one or more of the risk factors will lead to the impairment of the venous network of the lower limb. So it causes the ambulatory venous hypertension, which can lead to a chronic venous disease with tissue damage, that is tissue decompensation, that is chronic venous insufficiency. So again in pathophysiology causing of venous ulcers, we have two theories, no? That is fibrin cup theory and the white cell trapping theory. So all those are old theories. So actually the for a venous ulcer, for the development of venous ulcer is mainly due to the ambulatory venous hypertension, which is clinically proven theory. So visible morphological changes occurs as a result of this excessive pressure and defective peripheral vasoconstriction. So the venous will gradually stretches and ultimately land up in development of varicose veins. So all these before changes, all those things were the vein wall. So now it is at the tissue level. What are the tissue changes? So the permeability of the affected vein is increased. So the leg starts to swell. This is the edema stage. So to begin with, this edema regresses when the person lies down or rises the leg, but it gradually becomes permanent. So initially, patients will develop edema at the end of the day, and which gets relieved by taking the rest. That is, during night it reduces, and early morning it absolutely there is disappearance of the edema. And again, as the day passes and person used to stand for long period, then again edema will reappear. So stasis, extravasation, interstitial flooding, and local ischemia changes all occur later. So there will main thing is a altered cellular gases exchange will be there. So which will have the main effect on the tissue changes. So this is the flowchart diagram which clearly describes the pathophysiology of the chronic venous insufficiency. So to differentiate the primary and the secondary. So let us have a look. So primary venous disease, there will be a venous wall degeneration and venodilation. So land up in a venous reflux, and there will be a development of ambulatory venous hypertension, so which will have the vascular extravasation and the leukocyte or endothelial activation. So in case of vascular extravasation, there will be a perivascular cuffing of that is, there will be a fibrosis and edema. So edema which leads to the lymphatic microangiopathy. So whereas in case of acute DVT or secondary venous diseases, there will be a valvular destruction and there will be a residual obstruction, which in turn lands up in venous reflux. And again, ambulatory venous hypertension will be elevated, and there will be a same leukocyte or endothelial activation, which will cause the abnormal tissue remodeling, or the cytokines or proteolytic enzymes, and there will be a free oxygen metabolites or the radicals, which will ultimately leads into dermal fibrosis and ulceration, that is ulcer formation. So which in turn dermal fibrosis will end, which leads to the lymphatic microangiopathy. So this is the pathophysiology overall. So what are the stages of chronic venous insufficiency? So stage 0, no symptoms. Stage 1 is heavy feet syndrome. So the patient is painful. So usually pain, so characteristic of the pain will be dull, aching, dragging type of pain, which may progress to the heavy pain, that is feeling heaviness in the feet. So second stage is the intermittent edema. So edema appears and disappears. So third one is the persistent edema. So there will be persistent edema and hyper or hypopigmentation. So lipodermatosclerosis and eczema. And ultimate stage 4 is the active venous ulcer. So what are the symptoms? So is a fatigue, heaviness of the feet, spasms of gastrocnemius, paresthesias, and edema of shin and feet. So edema usually develops by at the end of the day or by prolonged standing and disappears after taking rest. This is the characteristic edema in case of venous disorders. So there will be dilated varicose veins. So nowadays the classical definition of varicose veins is a multiple tortuous elongated superficial veins which are more than or equal to 3 mm in diameter with with classical demonstration of reflex. This is called as varicose veins. So they appear as thin blue flares, often called as spider veins, or much wider twisted veins called as varicose veins that bulge on the surface. So skin changes. So there may be a gravitational dermatitis and hyperpigmentation. So here the hyperpigmentation is mainly due to the hemosiderin deposition, and lepidodermatosclerosis, nothing but the inflammation, induration, fibrosis, all these edematous, all this called as lepidodermatosclerosis. So what are the symptoms? So lipodermatosclerosis, there will be a proliferation of the dermal capillaries and fibrosis on the subcutaneous tissue or subcuticular plane. So there may be induration, pigmentation, especially lower third of the leg, that is shin or the ankle, and there will be associated inflammation. So lepidodermatosclerosis is nothing but the complication of varicose veins. So to say that the word lepidodermatosclerosis, all these features will be seen. That is a fibrosis, induration, pigmentation, and inflammation. And there will be a venous ulcer or trophic ulcers, and the inner surface of lower third of the shin above the ankle. This is the position of the exact venous ulcer. So single flat sloping edges. So in what is the Gaiter's zone? Can anyone say what is Gaiter's zone?
Medial malleolus area.
Medial.
Near the medial malleolus.
Why it is called Gaiter's zone? So in previous days, the soldiers who are going for wars, no, they used to wear the one type of ornament called as gaiter. So to prevent the injuries to the ankle joint. So exact region is the prone for venous ulceration. So it is called as gaiter's zone. That is between the two malleolus. That is medial malleolus and the ankle joint. So there will be a single flat sloping edges borders which are regular or irregular depending upon the presence of granulation tissue, type of granulation tissue, and presence of any secondary bacterial infection. So on discharge is scanty discharge, serous discharge, or purulent discharge. So if infection develops, ulcers becomes the painful. So around the ulcer, hemosiderosis and induration of the subcutaneous fat will develop. So in chronic venous disorders, there are two systems. That is the revised venous clinical severity score. Then one is the CEAP classification. So just have a look at this revised venous clinical severity score. So there are some clinical parameters, and for each one we will grade mild, moderate, and severe. So for mild we will give 1 point, and moderate will give 2 points, and severe will give you the 3 points for each clinical parameter. So for pain, for mild pain, that is occasional pain or other discomfort that is not restricting the regular daily activity, will give 1. So moderate is the which interferes but not preventing the regular daily activities. Whereas severe is daily pain or will definitely limits the regular daily activity. And varicose veins. So varicose vein in definition, you should include the more than or equal to 3 mm in diameter. So mild one is varicosities. Isolated varicosities are also includes the corona phlebectacy, that is the ankle flare. So what is ankle flare? These are the spider veins in a shape of fan will appear around the ankle joint due to the chronic venous insufficiency. So moderate is confined to the cough or thigh, whereas severe is the inverse, the cough and also thigh. So likewise, same venous edema. So mild is limited to foot and the ankle area, whereas moderate is extends above the ankle but just below the knee, whereas severe is extends to knee and above. Skin pigmentation. So this skin pigmentation should exclude the other causes of pigmentation, that is the other chronic diseases like vasculitis purpura. In those cases also patient will have the pigmentation. So those pigmentations you should not consider. So limited to the perimalleolar area is mild one, whereas diffuse up to the lower third of the cough is moderate and above lower third of the cough is severe. So these limited to perimalleolar area, all those will be considered in skin pigmentation and inflammation and induration also. So both mild limited to perimalleolar area over lower third of the cough and above the lower third of the cough. So coming to the active ulcer. So what is the number of active ulcers? So we will give mild for 1, moderate for 2 and more than 3 is the severe. Likewise active number and one is duration. Whether it is less than 3 months mild, more than 3 months but less than 1 year is moderate, and not healed for more than 1 year is severe. So active ulcers there is the largest active, that is diameter less than 2 centimeter is mild, more than 2 to 6 centimeter is moderate, and more than 6 centimeter is severe. And here in the scoring system includes the type of compression therapy, whether the patient is on continuous compression therapy or intermittently they are using. So if patient is on intermittent use of stocking, you should give him score of 1. Where stockings most of the daytimes, then we'll give 2. So full compliance, fully he is dependent on stockings, then we'll give the 0.3. So another and UG level, and while during presentation also you should completely write the diagnosis. So whether long saphenous vein is involved, short saphenous vein is involved, what is the perforator incompetence, whether it is primary or secondary, whether it is complicated or uncomplicated, and along with the CEAP classification should be right in your case sheets. So the CEAP classification is very important. This is a recent scoring system. So C for clinical science, E for etiological classification, A for anatomic distribution, and P for pathophysiological dysfunction. So this CEAP classification will be asked in Vivas also. So what is look? So let us have a look clinical classification. So C0 is no visible or palpable signs of venous disease. C1 is telangiectasis or reticular veins, that is less than 3 mm of veins. 3 mm in diameter is called a reticular veins. So varicose veins, that is more or equal to 3 mm diameter. And C3 is edema. C4 is pigmentation and eczema, that is dermatitis, that is gravitational dermatitis around the ankle area. C4b is lipodermatosclerosis and atrophic blanche. So C5 is healed venous ulcer. So atrophic blanche is nothing but the white patched areas will be seen around the ankle region. C6 is the active venous ulcer. So symptoms including the dull ache, pain, tightness, skin irritation, heaviness, muscle cramps, as well as other complaints attributed to the venous dysfunction. So A is asymptomatic, AS is symptomatic. So these are the some clinical diagrams which shows the. So here the diagram is not that much clear. So etiological classification, whether it is congenital, primary or secondary. So congenital cause of the chronic will present since birth. For example, I have already told some syndromes like Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome or AV malformations, congenital AV malformations. So other one is the primary, that is chronic venous disease of undetermined cause. So most of the 90% of cases are the primary, whereas secondary chronic venous disease with an associated known cause, that is DVT, deep venous thrombosis, other any injury, that is pelvic tumors, pregnancy, so all those things. So venous anatomic classification, it is AS, AD or AP. This is depending upon the which system is involved, whether it is superficial system, deep venous system, or it is perforating veins. So pathophysiological classification, it is PRO, that is a reflex, obstruction or both. So another one is the advanced CEAP. So along with all these anatomical, clinical symptoms and the pathophysiological, so with the addition of that some venous system. So which venous segment is particularly affected, you can mention in separate, that is called as advanced CEAP. So there are superficial under superficial veins, only telangiectasis or reticular veins are involved, or great saphenous vein position above knee, below knee, or entire long saphenous vein or non-saphenous vein other than saphenous veins. So likewise deep veins, whether inferior vena cava or common iliac, internal iliac, external iliac, pelvic like gonadal, broad ligament veins are the. So the examiners may ask what is the advanced CEAP. So just you should be kept in mind, that is what is advanced CEAP. Along with CEAP classification, particular venous segment involved is named. That's it. So what are the clinical features? So dragging type of pain and postural discomfort, heaviness in the field, like night cramps, especially night cramps, edema, itching, discoloration, and ulceration. So itching may be due to dermatitis. So usually varicose veins to start with will have a dull aching type of pain, but there is a cause of severe pain in varicose veins when there will be a development of chronic venous hypertension or ambulatory venous hypertension, and there is if there is a anoxia or associated with hyperviscosity condition or platelet aggregation and capillary functional disorders or altered cutaneous microcirculation. So all those when varicose veins are developed in those conditions, then we will have the severe pain. So what are the complications of varicosities? So there will be a hemorrhage, pigmentation, eczema, ulceration, periostitis, that is tibial periostitis, and lepidodermatosclerosis and talipes equinovarus type of gait deformity. Then deep vein thrombosis. So you should keep in mind one thing, that is deep venous thrombosis. Deep venous thrombosis is both etiology of varicose veins and a complication of varicose veins, and recurrent superficial thrombophlebitis. So where you will find the recurrent superficial thrombophlebitis other than varicose veins? Anyone? What is the
Deep,
name given for thrombophlebitis? Hello? So name given for, actually not for recurrent thrombophlebitis, that is called as migratory thrombophlebitis. Trousers syndrome. So it is seen in other conditions like mainly carcinoma, pancreas, ovarian carcinoma, prostate carcinoma, and gastrointestinal malignancies. So these are the clinical signs which will elicit or while examining the varicose veins. So main important one is the Brody-Trendelenburg test 1 and 2. So what is 1 and what is 2? Do you know how to elicit or how to do the varicose veins examination? Hello? Anyone, what is Trendelenburg
Yes,
test 1 and 2? How will you do the 1
Tying
and 2? What are the difference?
like
This
thread should be
this is
tied,
first
ma'am,
time
at the
varicose
junction.
veins or previously completed a varicose veins for you?
Ma'am,
Yes, ma'am, and
Hmm.
the patient is kept in supine position. Then his
Okay.
legs are raised, and
Hmm.
milking of the veins are done.
Hmm.
After milking of the veins, we'll tie a tourniquet at the saphenous opening.
Hmm.
Uh,
So
then we'll ask the patient to stand up.
how will you locate the saphenous opening?
Uh, I don't remember the exact locations, ma'am. Like 1.2 or centimeters from
I
what do you
just
say?
4
we have
centimeters below and lateral to pubic tubercle, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah,
4 centimeters below and lateral to the pubic tubercle.
yeah.
Then
Then we ask the patient to stand up.
okay. Actually, Trendelenburg test we should not tie the tourniquet. You should examiner thumb should be kept at the saphenous opening. So again, we will ask the patient to stand up without removing the thumb. So in test 1, what we will do is we will remove the thumb from the saphenofemoral junction. So then there will be a quick filling of
Filling
the column of the blood from
deep veins, ma'am, from above. If there is filling from above, it is saphenofemoral incompetence. In test
yes.
2, if there is filling from below, then it is perforator incompetence.
No, not below. Actually, that is first one is if you observe the quick column of blood from above downwards, it is saphenofemoral incompetence. In second test, what we'll do is again same procedure. We will again ask the patient to lie down. Again, we will empty the veins. Then we will put your thumb over the saphenofemoral junction. Again, we will ask the patient to stand up. This time we won't remove the thumb from the saphenofemoral junction. So instead of not removing the thumb, we will observe the gradual filling of the veins. So that is the inference that infers the perforator incompetence. So that is the difference. That is the difference between 1 and 2. So other one important one is the Perthes or modified Perthes. So what is Perthes and what is modified Perthes? Whether we are doing both the tests or only one test.
Ma'am, we'll tie an elastic bandage all over the leg and then we'll ask the patient to walk. If there is
Hmm.
any pain, it indicates DVT.
Not any
Cramping
pain.
pain during walk.
If cramping pain, that is the characteristic of DVT. Okay, the that we're doing practice nowadays.
No, ma'am.
So now,
The
no,
thrombus
nowadays
can break
we are
and
doing
lead to
the
formation of
modified.
emboli.
Hmm. So we are doing the modified practice. So what is modified practice? So nothing but the modified practice. Instead of wrapping the elastic bandage, we will tie the tourniquet and
Tourniquet.
saphenofemoral junction. So only tourniquet and septofemoral junction, and you should keep in mind that you should not empty the veins before doing the Perthes or modified Perthes to rule out the DVT. So, but suppose patient is having DVT, then if you do the milking, then there will be a dislodgement of the thrombus. So that is the modified and Perthes and modified Perthes, but nowadays we are doing only the modified Perthes. So tourniquet test, this is a multiple tourniquet test, one at the saphenofemoral junction, one between the knee joint and saphenofemoral junction, and three between just below the angle, that is 5 centimeters from the angle, 10 centimeters from the knee joint, and 15 centimeters from the knee joint, 5, 10, 15. So we will tie the all tourniquets before the same procedure. We will ask the patient to lie down. After emptying the veins, we will tie the tourniquets, and later on we will ask the patient to stand. So now observing the filling of the varicoses in between the tourniquets, so that proper perforator vein is incompetent. So that is multiple tourniquet test. So only these three clinical tests are done while doing in OPD procedures. So if patient come with varicosities, then main clinical test to be done is the Trendelenburg test 1 and 2, then is the modified Perthes and the multiple tourniquet test. So what is Schwartz test? It is a palpatory method. So what is Schwartz test? It is if you tap the most prominent lower part of the dilated varicose vein, so we will hear the column of that sound is saphenofemoral junction. So that is the Schwartz test. So which indicates the valvular incompetence. Next one is the Fagon's test. What is Fagon's test? How will you do the Fagon's test? Anyone?
Dipping at the
Ma'am,
site
in
of
Schwartz
perforated.
test,
Schwartz test.
ma'am, in Schwartz test, the patient will be in supine position.
Patient will be in.
Supine
Hello?
position. Yes, ma'am.
Tell me.
Ma'am, in Schwartz test, the patient will be in supine position.
No, no, no. Hello? Now
Yes, ma'am.
patient will be in standing position, then only there will be filling of column of blood. Then we will tap over the lowermost part, dilated part of the vein. Then at saphenofemoral junction, we will hear the tapping sound.
Ma'am, if there's a valvular incompetence, the whole blood will come down, right? The column of the blood.
Mm-hmm.
So how will we listen at the junction, ma'am?
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
No, because in squash test we have to done the standing position. There will be the prominent dilated veins, no?
Yes, ma'am.
So then only we have to, if we have to check for what is the inference in squash test is whether there is column of blood is complete or not.
Oh,
If the column of blood throughout the dilated vein is there only, we can have the sound. We can hear the sound at saphenofemoral junction. No, if we have the flow of the blood only, no, we can hear the sound.
okay, ma'am.
Otherwise, if you have doubt, you can see the DAS book.
Yes, ma'am.
Because in standing position, if you tap over the lower dilated part, then you have to auscultate over the saphenofemoral junction.
Yes, ma'am.
If you empty the blood, then we cannot hear the sound, no? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
So that is the Schwartz test and Fagon test. So what is Fagon's test? So by doing the multiple tourniquets, we will already localize the perforator incompetent sites. So we have to mark those perforator incompetent sites, and again we will empty the veins by lifting the lower limb. Now we have to feel the pits in the deep fascia. We have to feel the pits in the deep fascia where we have already marked the perforator incompetence sites. There it confirms the perforator incompetence. So what is Pratt's sign? Pratt's test. What is Pratt's sign? What is Pratt's test? So Pratt's sign is seen in deep vein thrombosis. So what is Pratt's sign? When you will compress the both lateral sides of the calf muscle, then patient will get a severe crampy pain. But nowadays we are not doing the Pratt's sign. We are not doing the Pratt's sign also. We are not seeing the Pratt's sign. So what is Pratt's test? So we are tying the crepe bandage from below upwards to the whole limb and tourniquet at the saphenofemoral junction. So now we will ask the patient to stand up and remove the elastic bandage and the tourniquets. There we will see the blowouts where there is a location of perforator incompetence. At that places we will see the blowouts. That is the Pratt's test. So other examination is the important one is the low abdominal examination, because in pelvic tumors or in pregnancy also there is a risk for development of varicosities. So if at all there is the ulcer, again we have to examine and write in detail about the ulcer. Same inspection, palpation, all those things. And last one is the regional lymph node examination. So what are the investigation we will like to do in varicose veins? So main thing is to localize the anatomical location of the disease, whether it is short saphenous vein or long saphenous vein or the deep vein or the perforator vein incompetence is involved. Next one is the nature of the disease, whether there is a reflex or any obstruction. Then to rule out the deep vein thrombosis. So venous Doppler. So nowadays we are doing the duplex scan, that is the Doppler along with B-mode ultrasound. So to know the functional and anatomical information. Then DVT is well made out through duplex scan. So when there is a uniphasic signal, that is the normal, and when there is a biphasic signal, that is a retrograde flow or reversal flow. So another important one is the venography. So whenever we are we are not having the duplex scans, then we will go for venography. That is the ascending venography and the descending venography. So ascending venography, here we are dorsal venous arch is canulated and the tourniquet is tied at malleoli. So the dye is injected, and after injection we will take the X-rays. So with there we can exclude the presence or absence of the DVT and the perforator status. But nowadays we are not doing the venographies, only we are doing the duplex scan. So descending venography, whenever ascending venography is not possible, you can do the descending venography. So what is the descending venography? The dye or contrast material is, that is, femoral vein is cannulated and the contrast through the femoral vein is done, and there we can see the valvular incompetence of the valve. So next class we will be dealing with the what are the different modalities of treatment for varicosities and the deep vein thrombosis. Thank you.
అదే